great. I am so happy to be here this morning. You could not possibly imagine. I have been, it's on. It's on? Can you hear me? Okay. Okay, I'm not very technologically inclined. This is certainly for me a very, very special time. Very special time. And before I begin, because we have a lot to talk about, I was told I have 3 or 4 hours. Anybody? Okay, I'll talk to the pastor. Okay, there you go. And but before I begin, I want you to allow me to do a prayer. Let's pray. Thank you, Jesus, for being present this moment in each one of our hearts. I want to ask that you prepare and make us receptive to your word. And I ask you to put me aside and you speak to your people this morning. In his name, amen. Since I usually speak in Spanish, most of the Spanish churches around town know me. And I probably spoken, I don't know, maybe I can count on one hand and have fingers left, the American churches that I spoken in English. So I was speaking with Felipe in the back, and he said that I can do this in Spanish. You know, that's where I feel more comfortable. So Spanish it is? Okay. Vamos a comenzar esto. No, I'm really, 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 really honored to be here this morning. And when they asked me to speak, the first thing that comes to my head is, what am I going to wear? What am I going to wear? What store am I going to go and get my outfit? And the second thing that comes to my mind is, what am I going to do with my hair? However, do you know why I ask those questions? Because really, it's his work. That's okay. That's my job, to try to find what to wear. This is my outfit for the day. And trust me, I looked around for this outfit. And this is his work. It's not my work. It's never been my work. And it will never be my work. And the day that I feel that it is my work, it will stop being his work. And I don't ever want that day to come. And the reason that I am telling you that is because not too long ago, I was very frustrated by certain things. You know, when you speak around long enough, it gets a little stressful. And there was something that happened that didn't quite set me right. And, you know, of course, I got my neurotic side. I'll talk to you about that later. And I literally had to go home and come down. But as I got up that morning, there was something in my mind that kept me running around in circles in my house. I knew that there was a message that God wanted to give to me. I just didn't know what it was. And when I came here, that was maybe 4 or 5 Saturdays ago, and I sat back there, something told me what the message was. And I opened my bag, and I pulled out a pen. Actually, not a pen. I pulled my eyeliner, and didn't have a pen, so I pulled my eyeliner, literally, and I wrote down, "It is my work. This is my work, not your work." And it was a message from God to me personally that this is not about me, and that when the frustration comes, don't handle it, please. Give it to me. That's my work. I believe that we need this message because I need this message, and I am just as human as you are. Even though I am in the counseling field, you know the rumors that go around about people that go into counseling. You know the rumor, right? The rumor is we're trying to resolve our own problems. And so I need this message as well. And I really hope that as God speaks to me, because God speaks to me in every message that I give, that he speaks to you as well. And when I was approached about speaking here, they wanted to talk a little bit about families. They wanted to talk a little bit about emotional, mental health issues, because that stuff, it's in the church. It's in the church. Let's say the truth. It's in here, and it's here big time. I can tell you that because I see it. I see a lot of us that are coming to see me that need to hear about how God wants us healed, and that need to find out that whatever situation we are in today, that we can go to God for that situation. That God is not just in this church, but that God is also in each one of our homes. And so our topic for the day, it's something that really has come out of a lot of work that I've done. I know that they told you I've been married 25 years. I know I look 21. I know everybody tells me. And when Steve was talking about who's been here more than 40 years, that's a trick question. I am not answering that question. That is a trick question. But I have been married for 25 years, and I have 3 children. One of them is gone to be with the Lord. And I have been through my moments where I could not put one foot in front of the other. And so when I'm speaking with you here, I feel that this is going, hopefully, if you let it, it's going to touch your heart, and it's going to touch my heart. But this topic really came out of many years of speaking with people, counseling families, and I have put together these 7 steps that I believe are fundamental to us really having emotional health. Emotional health. Have you seen a Christian who is only good in church? Have you seen one of those? And when you go to their houses, it's a totally different animal. An animal is the word. Okay? We need emotional healing. Emotional healing cannot come unless spiritual healing has occurred. I believe the only decision that I have made that have made the impact on my life, literally, it has not been going to school, although can leave that out. But it doesn't mean going to school, because most of the most brilliant people that I know are extremely hostile, sometimes very sick emotionally. So being intellectually very smart does not mean that you have emotional health. So it has not been just going to school. It has not been anything else but that day in 1977, October the 1st, when I gave my heart to Jesus. From that point on, my life has been only through what the Word of God is telling me. Now that I haven't made mistakes, make lots of mistakes, But that was the important decision that kept me in God's care. Whether I went far, always come back to the place that I belong. And so these 7 steps, I'm going to go over them with you one by one. I'm going to try not to dwell too much on them. I know that we only have an hour, maybe 45 minutes this morning, and I'm going to try not to stretch, because that's another reputation I have. I didn't tell you, and I didn't tell anybody who invited me. I do go on. But I am going to speak for about an hour. We're going to keep it simple. But these are 7 steps that we really need to keep in mind if we want to foster in ourselves and our families emotional health. And the first thing that I want to do is to give you the definition of emotional health. Emotional health does not mean that we don't have emotions. Emotional health does not mean we don't cry. Does not mean we don't get sad, we don't get angry, because Jesus got sad. He got angry. We got examples to tell us that it's okay to have those emotions. But emotional health is the ability to express all of those emotions in a healthy and appropriate manner, maintaining our level of functioning. The absolutely best indicator that you are or I am emotionally stuck is when we get trapped with whatever it is that it has happened to us. When we get stagnated, that means we are not getting emotionally healthy. It doesn't mean that traumas are not going to happen to us. It means that when they happen to us, we don't get stuck. Let me tell you about a story of a patient of mine years ago. And this lady came to see me. She was a PhD, had a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences. Remember, it was a while back. I remember her because she great-looking lady. And she came in, she was referred to me, and we were speaking roughly about an hour towards the end. Every single conversation had to do with her husband. How awful he is, how terrible he treats her, how unattending he is, how he really does not look after, how he really doesn't, thank you, Jack, how he really does not care what she feels, and on and on and on and on and on. And I said, well, you know, wow, you've got so many problems. It seems like they're all related to your marriage. So why don't we, trying to make a plan for the next session, I said, why don't you bring him to the next session? I mean, that makes sense. Wouldn't that make sense to you? Bring the guy over. She says, well, I can't. We've been divorced for 20 years. You see? Say what? Come again? I said, what? She goes, no, we've been divorced for 20 years, but you just have, is that man, and that is when I know that dysfunction, that stagnation in that moment in life marked that lady for the next 20 years of her life. Can someone come in your life and actually give it to you and leave you wounded for 30 years? Absolutely, if you let it. Absolutely, if you let it. So you really have to know when something happens to you, and it will happen to you. It will happen to you. It's happened to me. It's happened to her. Everybody. It's going to happen to you one day. So when that happens, you have to be ready to say, there's someone that says that he says, when you are wounded and a trauma has occurred in your life, you have 2 options. Always think about these 2 options. You got 2 options. You either get ready to suffer, and you could suffer. Some of us have an addiction to suffering. There's a whole study going on about that and that addiction of being addicted to drama and suffering. And if you're not suffering, you're not alive. There's a whole school of study about that, And so you either get ready to suffer or ready to heal. Two options. God never said that we're never going to go through anything. He never said that, because Jesus went through enough. And so you're going to go through stuff. How you're going to survive is that you got to have that foundation ready to suffer or ready to heal. And so the best indicator, you see, I stood too long on that one. Here comes the next slide. The best indicator is that we are not emotionally healthy is when you still 20 years later, 2, thinking about the same thing that happened to you. It's not telling you when it comes to you to suffer and stay. It's telling you there is something here inside that needs to come out. It's an energy that's there. It needs to come out. You need to express it, deal with it so that you can move on. That's all it's saying. When you're depressed, it doesn't say, oh, be depressed and cry and don't do anything and give up schoolwork, beat up your wife, do whatever you need to do. No. It's saying there's something here. Something here. Feel it in your stomach. That's a language. There's a language connected to emotional pain. The language, there's not only one way for us to communicate. There's very different ways to communicate. We can communicate in words. We can communicate in body language. We can communicate. Our body can communicate to us, not only in our thoughts. Sometimes we're not thinking it, but the stomach gets a knot. And the throat gets a knot. You can't swallow. That's your body saying, not suffer, drop dead, and die. Stop living. It's saying there's something here. You need to pay attention to it. There's something for you to pay attention to recognize so that you can move on and heal. That's what it's for. That's what it's for. And so when people come to see me, how I want to see you. I want you to take care of this problem. I say, okay, okay. 3-4 visits. It's not to dwell on the problem. It's to confront it, to admit that it is a problem that is affecting your life and your family, and to heal it, to do everything in your power, in God's grace, to take care of that problem. And so the first step to being emotionally healthy, and literally I can tell you, I can stay on that step and not tell you anything else, because that is such an important step. Recognize where you come from. Recognize your origin. So, and before I move on, I want to just go to a verse in the Bible. Okay? So you can go with me there. Jeremiah 1, verse 4. That's the only verse I'm going to give you this morning. So if you didn't bring your Bible, it's not going to be too bad. Jeremiah 1, number 4. Then, okay, still here flipping. Then the word of the Lord came to me, saying, before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee. And before thou came forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. And I ordained thee as a prophet unto the nations. I read that verse almost everywhere I go, because a lot of our problems really come from the fact that we don't know who we are. We have no clue what our value is in God. We have no clue. And if you can get this step down, you almost set. Because when you know who you are in God, there is no way that you are going to allow a situation of abuse to yourself. There is no way you're going to allow somebody to come and abuse your children. There is no way you're going to allow to not forgive yourself and be good to yourself when you know your value. You have to know your spiritual nature and recognize that you are enough. Because before you came, you already were enough. You know, I heard somebody say the other day, it says, you know, we come with nothing and we leave with nothing. There's a message in between that parentheses. It means you're taking nothing. So you really are enough. And number 3 is recognizing ways in which we disconnect and realizing that we are God's desire. How do we? This is one of the ways that we forget who we are. We disconnect. There are few ways that we disconnect, and we all do it. We all do it. We start associating our value with what we do. I'm a mother. I'm a wife. I'm a worker. I'm an attorney. I'm a therapist. I'm a fireman. And once that goes, then you're nothing. If today you lose your job, if today your husband leaves, you're not longer a wife. If today your children leave, you can stop being a mom, a wife, a worker. And if you attach your value to that, very soon you are really risking yourself. The second way that we disconnect is connecting ourselves to what is it that we are separated from the rest. Let me tell you, we are definitely enough. However, God created us so that we are all connected. We're not separated. When you hurt someone else, you're really hurting yourself. You're really hurting yourself. And I tell this a lot because in a lot of the groups for domestic violence, in the groups that have to do with the perpetrators, what we see and what they have found out is that the perpetrators, the ones that are the abusers, they are in as much pain as the victim. So we really are not separated from each other. The other way that we disconnect from who we are is that we feel we are what we possess. And you know that if you've heard about the housing crisis going on, we connect to the house, we connect to the children, we connect to the money, to the car, and once that leaves, we feel that we are nothing. I remember a case that I had, and I do conferences for the dependency court system in Miami-Dade, and I've done definitely thousands and thousands of conferences with families, and a lot of the cases, just an enormous amount of cases, come in because of domestic violence. And in a lot of the cases, when we are doing the conferences with these families and their comments being made by a case, let's say I've had a few cases within the last few months about women that have been murdered and about husbands that have killed their wives and then killed themselves. And one of the comments that the families make is when they come to the conferences is, you know, he said that if she left, he didn't want to live. He said that if she was going to be gone, he didn't want to have life without her, that she was his life. And when that person thinks that they are that other person and their connection is to another person, that can be very dangerous. What are you connected to that you feel If that left, you were nothing. That's scary. That is scary. You think about that question long and hard and ask God to take that God away. Because that is a God. And it gets us in big trouble when you attach your worth and your value to a thing or a person or a title or a position. Number two, step number 2, practicing integrity. Let me tell you, this issue of integrity is really a heavy-duty issue. Why? Because this is the issue that I see the most in the church that we have sometimes problems with. Integrity does not mean you tell lies only. Integrity does not mean that you try to tell the truth. The definition of integrity means that what you say in your life are not too far from each other. They're not too far from each other. And we can get, and our children are good for this. They know who we are. You know, we can pretend with our kids. We can fool everybody else, but our kids let us know. Really, if we're having integrity. Because I've been told. She used to tell, Mom, you're getting annoying. Mom, you're getting annoying. That means I was nagging too much. Kids know when there's no integrity between what we confess in the church and the life we live at home. There is no better recipe for creating a schizophrenic child than to be one thing here and one thing over there, totally different. And I went to a church, and this lady approached me at the end. Usually how it usually happens, you'll see it this afternoon, because they'll make a line, and, I'll try to tell you, how you can go with your problems, and we'll talk a little bit. And obviously, I don't want to take the credit for you resolving your problem, mainly because I don't want to take the fault if it goes wrong. And this lady approached me, and she waited until everybody left, and I was just exhausted. I mean, I was just like tired. It was like close to 7 o'clock. It was a church way out of town, and I just wanted to go to my hotel. But she was crying so much. I said, go ahead and sit there. She was saying about how unimaginable pain emotionally. From the time that she got up in the morning to the time that she went to bed at night, she was receiving from this man. You good for nothing. I'm going to put you out on the streets. When you go to sleep, I'm going to do X, Y, Z. And I was pretty concerned about her, frankly. I don't like to be dropped those bombs, just when I'm ready to go home, because there's stuff that we as professionals are responsible for. But she was very sad. And I said, well, it's getting kind of late. I talked about certain things, and I said, it's getting kind of late. This is my phone number. Call me, email me. I'll tell you a couple of places that you can go to. And I said, but please go home, because if you don't go home, you may be in trouble. I don't want you running late home, like 8, 9 o'clock, because you're here talking to me on a Saturday night. He may not believe you. You're waiting for the punch, right? She says, no, he's vacuuming the church. I have to wait for him. He was a deacon. He's vacuuming, and when I saw him, I just could not believe that kind of pain is going on with God's people. It was beyond my understanding that this kind of pain can be going on with us. I can see that we're not perfect. I can see that much. But it's beyond me that we can sit here and go home and so mistreat the partner that God gave you. And I do hear from men as well, because men do suffer in silence. Because men suffer a lot. Because I heard someone say that a lot of times men die first because they just want to get out. They can't take it. He says, I want to just do it to you. I'm going to die. See who you're going to mistreat. Because men also get very abused because we know how to use this mouth. We women are good at it. And we let him have it. And God will ask us to answer for that. Because men are kind of trapped. I'm really sorry. This is just for men now. Really sorry for men a lot of times because society does not allow them to speak. Men do not go around saying, could you believe it? No. Men can be falling apart. Literally. Losing it all. Feeling like they're nothing. And they meet their best friend in the corner and talk about baseball. Because they're not allowed to speak. They're not allowed to cry. They're not allowed. And for that abuse, we will have to answer. We will have to answer. Integrity. Do I go back? So integrity has to do with us really being the same as much as it can possibly be close. What we say and what we live in our home. Taking responsibility for our actions. Realizing the power of being truthful. The power of being truthful. There is power in that. And welcoming the whole person. Meaning, we're not all good. We know we're not all light. Why do we keep pretending? We all good. We all light. We're not all light. We have a dark side. Embracing that side and becoming powerful by being truthful. And you know, our children know when we're being truthful. And that is a modeling that we need to do for our children, to be truthful. To tell our children, if you want to go to church, this is the person that we are in church. Be just like that at home. As close as you can. Be like that at home, because a lot of our kids are leaving the church. A lot of us, and I went to a church the other day, not too long, where we were speaking about the same thing about integrity, and I said, let's go home and ask forgiveness to our children for running them over, for running over them. Let's ask forgiveness to our children for the stuff that we've been trying to manage in our own lives that we know for sure has affected them. And to say that, I did give an example that's my own. My daughter, who's 23 years old, she recently got married, 2 years it's going to be, she got married. And you know, as you know, the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree. She called me one day, on a Sunday afternoon, and she was hysterical. She was hysterical. She said, Mom, you're not going to believe this. Mom, you're not going to believe this. She lives in St. Louis. She said, Mom, would you believe that Ahmed just came saying to me that some friends of his are coming over to eat? He didn't even tell me. What am I going to do? The house is not clean. I have to do the kitchen. He can't do this to me just like Dad used to do to you. You see, Mom? I can't take it. She was ready to walk out of the house. And I did not know, because Melissa is 5'10". Melissa is 5'10". And Melissa is hard to deal with. And I said, Melissa, but just pick up, honey, just, pick up around the house, just put the stuff under the rug or in the closet. Do whatever. She goes, Mom, no. Mom, he's not going to do this. He's not going to do this to me now. Melissa's in law school. And Melissa knows how to argue. And she was arguing so much against it that I said, some divine lightning hit me. And I said, Melissa, I'm sorry. She goes, what? I said, your mother is sorry. I ask your forgiveness. She goes, oh, what do you mean? I said, I taught you that. What? I said, I taught you that. To be neurotic. To overstress over little things. Oh, I'm telling you all my secrets. Okay. To overstress. To have your father ask me, like 3 weeks ahead so that I can really clean all the mess before somebody. I taught you that. I ask your forgiveness. Why don't you? Don't care about the house. Welcome his friends and have a wonderful time. Because being neurotic is a habit. And she said, attorney to be, absolutely nothing. Said, Mom, I love you. She hung up. At 10 o'clock, Sunday night, she calls my mom in New York and then calls me and said, Mom, I just thought you might want to know that I have had the most wonderful afternoon I've had since I moved here. Because I made a decision to be happy and to be not neurotic. It's a decision. It's a decision. And so we also have to be truthful with our children. When we make a mistake, make a mistake. And when I told this story at another church, a woman came back in the afternoon and said to me, I went home and asked my girls forgiveness for some stuff that I know have marked them in a certain way. And we had a great time. And do that when you go home. Try to see a little bit of yourself in your children, and you know that some of that is you. You know that that's your spill. That's part of having integrity. When your child see that you take responsibility for the mistakes that you do. Number 3, recognize the family impact on your emotional health. It's being willing to examine your life. We don't want to look at what's back there. And I can tell you 1,000 stories, and I can tell you 1,000 stories of stuff that because we have not looked back, we can move forward. And I was speaking at a church, and there was a man there that's close to 70 years old, and we were talking a little bit about sexual abuse, and just briefly mentioning it, but it was a very powerful statement. I don't remember exactly what it was, but he, close to 70 years old, being there with his wife, and about a week or so later, she calls and she says to me, I have something to tell you. I just want to let you know that we might have to come and see you. She said, when you were speaking, my husband said to me when the service ended, as we were walking to the car, I was sexually abused. She said, and I want to thank you because for so many years, being married so many years to this man, I knew that something was not right. In that moment, it was like he was prompted to just unload that information. Something that came from his family that have to this day, almost 70, continue to affect his relationships with other people. And so becoming open to examining your life becomes a very crucial issue again, not just to stay there, but to say, this is what happened, how do I move on? Recognizing that all families have problems, that the only issue is that we also need to recognize the dysfunctional patterns, and that whatever happened to your family does not have to become a pattern. It does not have to go to the next generation. It does not have to affect your children. God wants to heal each one of us. And I remember one time that I had a patient who did not want to see anyone. He just was resistant, and he was in a facility, and I was supposed to do an evaluation, but they said, go in. We're not quite sure whether you're going to be able to speak with him, because he doesn't really want to talk to anyone. He's really very despondent. He's very angry. At the same time, he's very sad. We don't know exactly what to do with him. And I just went there, and I sat there for a little bit. I knew that he was not going to talk to me initially. He was just very upset. And when I sat there, and it's something that I encourage you to do, I just offer my presence. Just my presence. Just in the moment. Just, you don't have to say much sometimes to people for them to feel that you're helping them. Just offer your presence. Just you. Just let them deposit that, whatever it is, your children, without judgment. Just sit. And I say, how you doing? I'm okay. I don't really want to talk to anybody. Was Hispanic. And we spoke about his family and his brothers, and after about 40 minutes, he started crying, nonstop. I could not get him to stop crying. And I said at the end, I said, what happened? What happened? Did I say anything? He goes, you just don't understand. And he said that over and over again, and I said, what is it that I don't understand? He says, you just don't understand. I have not cried since I was 7 years old. He says, you are the first person that have made me cry. And since that day, we were the best of friends. And I really didn't say much. Something happened to him so atrocious. He stopped crying and never really cried again until that day that he saw me. That's hard to understand. That's hard to understand. There are things that happen in our families that we are carrying it like it just happened yesterday. And I can take you there very, 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 very easy. I can just tell you to think about something that really hit you when you were a child, that made you feel like you were nothing, that made you feel very afraid, and you can go instantly to that moment. I know that you can. I know that you can. And if you have not healed from that, you think about that every day. You don't just think about it. You act it out. You feel it constantly in your body. It's still with you. Sometimes we think that things are just recorded on papers. No. The body is just as spiritual as anything else. This body records everything that happens to us. And the memory stays there, and we continue to suffer and continue to be upset about something that happened years ago. Number 4, confronting our secrets. Examining the power of a secret. Embracing self-forgiveness. Accepting our dark side and trusting God to release that secret. Let me tell you, this is a really difficult thing for a lot of us, because in churches, secrets grow. Because sometimes we confuse being spiritual with keeping secrets and looking like nothing is going on. We have a lot of, in quotes, looking good families. They look great. They look great. They dress well, they have a nice home, they drive in their car, they sit in the front seat or the second seat, and they are wonderful families looking good. And we will sell our soul just to continue to look good. Let me tell you, it's a high price to pay. And let me tell you, second, it's not worth it. Because it isn't a life of integrity. So if there is a secret, you don't have to tell me, please. If there is a secret that you know, has been impacting your family, confront it, give it to God, confess it, or it will not go away. What does Albert Einstein say? Energy does not go out of existence, it just changes form. And so, right, so that, it means that energy is just going to show someplace else. You got a secret? You were sexually abused? You got a home that you wanted to look good, but you know you're getting beaten up as soon as you walk in the door? Well, that's a secret. You don't want to tell anybody because then your family's not going to look good. You know what? It's going to show because your kids are going to go in school and they're going to be depressed. Because your kids are going to do all kinds of things. Well, I don't know what could be wrong with that boy. It's going to show because secrets have a lot more power when you keep it hidden. What happened to Tamar? What happened to Tamar? She was abused. She was raped. She was violated. By whom? By her brother. What did David do? What did he do? Quiet. He said quiet. And what happened to that secret? How did it express itself? In the worst possible way. In the worst possible way. We believe that when there is something, that there is a secret in a family that has not been told, one of these secrets that we know can destroy your family, I am guaranteeing you this moment that it will move to the next generation. It will express itself in the next generation. It will not leave. About 6 months ago, I was running a conference with the courts. She had lost her children, and we were doing a termination of parental rights conference. You know, it's bad news to communicate. We're here to tell you you were going to take your children for good. This is what we're moving forward. You know, this is what we're going to do. It's pretty devastating news. And she was there, and she was by herself. One of the reasons that the case came in is because her daughter, it really came in because there was other minor children, but her oldest daughter, who was about 13, 14 years old, was prostituting herself. And obviously, because she's a minor, it came in as neglect because mom did not report that she was missing. And when we spoke with her, we said, what's going on? Well, I can't take that girl. I just cannot take it anymore. She's not behaving. She doesn't go to school. She wants to be roaming the streets, and I just can't take it anymore. You guys go and do whatever you need to do. And as we get to talking, like we normally do in these conferences, she was saying the issue came up, one of the allegations, that the complaint was that that daughter was being sexually abused by the mom's paramour or the boyfriend. But that's not the interesting part. The interesting part is that as we spoke about it, we found out that the mother had been sexually abused by her father. The father, who was sitting outside in the waiting area, who did not come with her into my office, to the conference room, sat outside. Are we having a secret here that is being expressed? So he's outside. I said, did anybody come with you? Yeah, my dad is outside. But don't let him in, please. Don't let him in. I don't want him to know that I told. You know, she has still not reported that. And as it turned out, he had been sexually abused by an uncle. Guess where the uncle was living? With the grandfather of the babies that was living with the father of the girl. Everybody, not secret. Can't tell. Is it being expressed? Is it being acted out? Absolutely. And I just get amazed at how we can manage to move one dysfunction to another. It's got to stop. Just air it. Just say it. Just give it to the Lord. Nothing will happen unless you give it to the Lord. You need to have chaos before you have peace. You need to move stuff around. It doesn't matter if it feels bad. I know a lot of times I said to people, something needs to happen here. This needs to happen. Oh, it's just too much chaos. And let the chaos be. Because when you have your house and you fixing your house and you cleaning your house, and if somebody came in the middle of that cleaning, they say, oh, wow, what a disorderly house. Until you put it all back. And when you put it all back, your house smells good. It looks clean. It's organized. You need to get it out. Give God the chance to work that secret for you, or you will not be emotionally healthy. You need to trust God with that secret. Eliminate violence from your life. Number one rule of emotional and physical abuse is, it is never, 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 never okay. Never. Never, never, never. What's the rule? Never. It is never okay. So please don't tell me your friend told you, I had to beat her up because I found her with a guy. Never okay. Never okay. Not only to abuse someone, but it's never okay for you to feel that this is something that you need to take. Never okay. That's the first rule. Recognizing a victim mentality. Victim mentality is, I heard the other day that people are married 30 years, 40 years, and I heard Pastor T.D. Jakes the other day saying, people can be fully committed to misery. They sure could. And if it's 25 years, 40 years, you can be committed to misery for 40 years, and 50 years, and 30 years. Let me tell you the story that I tell everywhere. The day that I stop telling the story, I'm looking at my watch. You got to hear this story. You going to stay? The day that I do not get a person to come to me after the story and tell me that that is her or him, I will stop, I promise. I will stop. But it has become now like a research study for me. I'm not much of a research person. I had a patient who I loved dearly. This patient, I was almost like this was not my patient. I loved her so much. She was very, probably 80 years old. And she, that was through my Medicare work. And she, one day, every time that I used to come in her room, she was reading the Bible. Very Christian, very devoted. And one day I came into her room and I said, how you doing? She goes, oh, I'm doing okay. So I sat in there and she was the one counseling me half the time. And so she starts to cry. She's feeling really bad. She's saying, I don't know what I'm going to do. I feel so bad. I hope God had forgiven me for all these things, but I have done something so atrocious. I guess I have to tell you. And I said, well, how bad could you have done at almost 80 years old in a nursing home? And she says, well, it's a long time ago. She says, I feel so bad. I feel so bad that the day that was the happiest day of my life is the day that my husband passed away. 45 years. She said that she married this man, and at 7 months of being married, he started abusing her, hitting her, and the children. She had 7 children by this man, who today are mad at her for staying, for exposing them, for allowing them to be in the home, because kids cannot say, this is not good, this is dysfunctional, I'm moving next door. They're mad at her. And so, she says that 45 years living with this man. And when he died, she said, it was the most peaceful, happiest night of my life. How sad. And she, is that a victim of what? And she felt that she was wrong. That God did not like her because she was feeling okay. You see how complicated we can be when we get abused for too long? We begin to believe that is the way it's supposed to be. That's very sad. And one of the reasons that I'm telling you is this, because in every church that I tell this story, someone always comes to me and says in my ear, I am that person. I am that person. And not too long ago, I was somewhere where the lady came to me and she said, I am that person. And I said, well, I'm sorry. She goes, the only difference with me is he's still alive. He's still alive. Minutes later, unbeknown to me, her daughter comes in and says, maybe in her 30s, she says, I just have to say that woman, that story that you told, that woman is my mother. She needs to I wish that she would have left my father a long time ago. And I wish he was not alive. And she was the daughter of that woman that had said that to me. And when I looked around, she says, that's him over there. And he was, as I approached the area where he was sitting late in the afternoon, the biggest Bible debater you ever want to see. He knew all the verses. He was, no, because Jesus, da, 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 da. So he was in the church. I'm saying these stories that are ours because they need to be ours. I want to connect them to us so that you know that it doesn't have to continue. That it is sad that when God wants to rescue us, we're still feeling that we need to be hiding things from God. Number 6, we're going to move. Eliminate all addictions from life. Addiction to people. Addiction to people. Do we get addicted to people? Absolutely. We self-medicate with people. We self-medicate with money. We self-medicate with alcohol. When we are addicted to something, it means that we don't want to live our lives, that whatever is taking place cannot continue. We just don't want to be that place. We don't want to be that way. And one way to not be present, to not literally be present in your life, is to self-medicate with work and everything else that makes you forget that problem is not there, because we're not trusting God to heal that problem. Resisting what is. One of the greatest ways to receive God's grace is to surrender. To surrender to His will and to His work in us. That means that a lot of times the only way that God has to tell us that he wants us to do something is to put us in the place that he needs to see us. And a lot of times we need to go through a lot of stuff before we see the grace of God working in us. Step 7, and the last one, setting aside time every single day to have quiet in our lives, embracing being rather than having. How many times have we said, if I just had that car, everything will be okay? And I remember when I bought the last home that we're living in, I walked in and I said, wow, if I have this house, I will never be unhappy again. This is it. Beautiful. However, as soon as you move in, what do you discover? You're the same person. You're the same person. Because if you're miserable before, you're miserable after. And a lot of women say, I need to find a man. If I just found a man. You know, I need a man. I mean, I'm just not complete. If I have a, let me tell you something. Be careful what you pray for. You don't need the right man or the right woman. You need to become the right man and the right woman. If you are not happy before that man came, I promise you, you will be just as miserable after he comes in. Because there is absolutely nothing that I've seen that brings out all about these functions from the past and puts it all together than intimate relationships. That's when the whole thing, we're doing fine, we're at work, very devoted, very in control. Get us into an intimate relationship, we're falling apart. We're falling apart and everything comes out. So the intimate relationships can shake us, can take the peace away. That's why I say a lot of the songs that are out there are reflective of people being connected and crazy about one another. And when that does not work, that can really mess up your life. Recognizing neurotic thinking is a habit. Respect your thoughts. Thoughts are very powerful. They can move you in one direction if you don't become aware. There are things that someone has done today. Usually when I speak with a man or a woman who has committed adultery or, have been unfaithful to their partner, when we start talking about it, they say, well, I was looking at her for about a year. I was thinking about it. Does it happen overnight? Overnight? No. It doesn't happen overnight. We have to respect our thinking. And I was about to tell you a story, but I better don't tell you. It's a very tragic, dramatic story. But just to tell you that there was a lady that I knew of who died of AIDS some years ago because she committed an act that she said she was fantasizing about it for 11 years. Respect your thoughts. They are powerful. They can put you in places that you do not want to be. Neurotic thinking means we think in a certain way. Give yourself the opportunity to open to a new way of thinking. Just like I told my daughter, it really didn't take any change in behavior. It took a change in thinking. And we need to refocus and change the way that we think and see our lives. Recognizing the connection between emotional stability and our thinking, and welcoming the practice of being quiet in order to hear. Being quiet is very important. And let me tell you, this is an exercise that I'm going to give you that has been very, 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 very helpful to me. And a lot of my patients, when they come to see me, sometimes, and some of them that are very, very stressed, that it is the thing, we have 60,000 thoughts per minute, an hour. 66, I mean, this is 95% of those thoughts are repeated thoughts. Go over the same thing, same thing, same thing. We get compulsive, obsessive about the same thing. It's neurotic. At any given moment, you can choose to think God's way, but you have to be able to introduce to yourself material that leads you in that direction. And let me give you an exercise that I do when I'm feeling kind of stressed, because sometimes I do burn the candle on both ends, and it seems like I have no time to really spend time with myself. But I get up at the quietest time of the night, maybe 3 to 4 in the morning. Actually, I don't get up. Actually, before I go to bed, I ask God to wake me up. And He does not fail. I'm up, and if I am not quick, I'll fall right to sleep. And so you get up, put your feet on the floor right away so that you don't go back to sleep. And sit down if it needs to be on the floor, and ask God to show you the way. Show me the way. Show me the way. How can I serve? How can I serve? How can I serve? Because one of the ways that we get out of ourselves is by serving other people, is by being connected to other people. And I know that the toughest times in my life, by far the toughest times, when I asked God for that prayer, He put in my heart to do work for someone else. And we started a project with some orphanages in the Dominican Republic that still exists today. And we just went there last week. I was there for my 25th wedding anniversary. And I took some time and we visited the orphanage. And that is a work that still remains from those prayers that I asked God, how may I serve? Lots of blessings have come out of that. Leave it in God's hands. Put it in God's kingdom. Do not stress how you're going to work something out. Just be silent. And in closing, I'm going to tell you a testimony that every time we have testimony time, I get very nervous to give testimonies. I want to raise my hands, and all of a sudden I start shaking. I can't do it. And she goes, Mayra, why don't you give the testimony? And I said, I get so nervous. She goes, Mayra, but you speak in public every day. And I said, I know, but I get nervous. I don't know what that is. You guys psych me out. But one day, I have a few contracts with a government agency, city of Miami Beach, different companies, but there was this one contract that I was doing that at the time it sort of kind of felt right to let it go. But it was a substantial amount of income. So I said, you know what, God, I'm going to let this go. And that night, I remember that I just, sort of a surrender night. And I said, that's it. You work it out. That's your problem. You see what you're going to do. And when I got up the next morning, that I turned on my cell phone, and I usually do not turn on my phone until like 11, because if not, I can't do work, because the phone rings. But I turned on my phone, and there was a message there. Hi, this is Dr. So-and-so. This is the X company. It's a major pharmaceutical company nationwide. Our company like to offer you this contract to do X, Y, Z. Would you please call me? What? And of course, I called him, let me see if I can accept you. Let me see. And so I called him up, and I said, hello, Dr. Shannon? He goes, yes. And I said, I'm sorry, do I know you from somewhere? He goes, no, but your name came to me. Somebody gave me your name, and we just want to talk to you about, doing work for us. And I said, who? He goes, he mentions the lady's name. I almost failed in integrity. I almost said, oh, I know who she is. Yeah, she's my friend. We just went out last week. No, I did not know who she was. I did not know who she was. And I said to him, I am so sorry. I don't know who she is. And he said, well, she knows you pretty well. I said, okay. So he spoke with me, and obviously that's one of the major contracts that I have, of somebody that did not know me, from somebody who I did not know. And I just met him in July for the first time. We've been working for a year, and I just met him in July at a training, and I met him, and I said, hi, how you doing? He took me to lunch twice during the training, and he said, what is this? I'm giving you a contract. I'm taking you out to lunch. What? He goes, that's God. That's God. Because you don't have to know anybody. You don't have to have any connections. Because I don't know how God worked that one out. And I can tell you that most of the stuff that comes to me have nothing to do with me soliciting. Right? It doesn't. It just comes if we give God the opportunity to work in us. So let's be quiet. Let's just offer God what we have. Let's give God what He gives to us. God can give to each one of us peace. We can begin to discover, not to invent. There's a difference between invention and discovery. Invention, you make something for something that already is. Discovery, it was there. And God has been there always. God has not changed. God, we need to discover our spiritual aspect with God and know that the best wish for God, we are His desire. God was thinking, He says, let me make Susie, let me make Mary. We are God's desire. We were in His heart before we came. How special that is. Let's give God the opportunity to show us how valuable and how precious we are to Him. God bless you. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.